alles on the record. Nogmaals allemaal bedankt weer voor het aansluiten. En voor degenen die vanochtend al de sessie gevolgd hebben, gaan we verder. En degenen die afgelopen dinsdag de sessie gevolgd hebben, is het vervolg. De ochtendsessies waren wat meer algemeen. Lieten we zien wat de voorkant was, wat een agent ziet of wat het voor de klant is. En deze sessie zullen we wat meer op de achterkant gaan kijken. Zometeen zal Michael laten zien hoe je een klant kan aansluiten. Kleine waarschuwing voor de wat meer salesmensen. Dat kan af en toe een beetje pittig zijn. Even doorbijten. Wat is dit voor technisch stuk? Trek het even meer, pak een bak koffie. Want daarna wordt het echt weer ook voor de salesmensen interessant als we ook echt de callflows gaan inrichten. Het blijft mij elke keer weer verbaasd wat het toch mogelijk is met Tendfor. En ik denk dat het echt leuk is om te zien, ook voor sales, om te zien welke mogelijkheden zijn. Zodat jullie ook het haakje kunnen maken bij klanten. Of joh, is dat niet mooi om een keer te gebruiken? En is dat toch niet wat extra's op Teams wat er mogelijk is? Vorige keer zijn we allemaal mooi op tijd geëindigd. Dus ik denk dat we dat vandaag ook weer voor elkaar moeten krijgen. Maar zoals beloofd, Bart, de moeilijke vraag voor jou. En een vraag die je kreeg vanuit de vorige sessies is, Tendfor is sinds een tijdje een onderdeel van Anywhere Now. En om inderdaad moeilijke dingen die uit de weg gaan gaan, zijn natuurlijk bij partners van ons de ervaringen met Anywhere 365 destijds nog niet altijd positief geweest. Vanuit mijn kant, het is niet voor niets dat wij nog steeds Anywhere in ons portfolio hebben. En nu ook Tendfor dat hebben toegevoegd, al was dat nog voor de samengang met Anywhere. Er zijn natuurlijk veel veranderingen daar geweest ook. Dus we hebben daar nog steeds de goede ervaringen mee, in ieder geval richting de toekomst, om daarmee door te gaan. Wat kun jij daar nog over vertellen, Bart? Hoe dat zit nu dat jullie een onderdeel zijn van Anywhere? Wat zijn de voordelen? Waar kunnen mensen dan toch last hebben met de ervaringen die ze nu hebben? Of kun je de mensen geruststellen? Nou, voor zover mijn moeilijke vraag.
Wat het verleden betreft en wat Anywhere betreft, kan ik uiteraard niets over vertellen. En ga ik ook niets over vertellen. Het moederbedrijf achter Anywhere heeft ervoor gekozen om ons toe te voegen aan het portfolio, zodanig dat er naar de markt toe een breder productportfolio kan aangeboden worden, zodanig dat de klanten nog beter kunnen afgetoetst worden en ondersteund kunnen worden van A tot Z. Dus eigenlijk zijn wij volledig complementair. En wij werken op een iets andere manier. Dat zullen de mensen ook merken. Ik weet dat er ook een aantal jongens van Maxus in zitten. Die hebben ook al met ons contact gehad. En ook anderen. Wij werken heel snel. Dat zul je ook merken. Dirk, dat weet jij ook. Een POC opzetten, dat is heel gemakkelijk. Je stelt ook elke keer weer tijdens de sessies vast dat het echt gebruiksvriendelijk is. Lego-blokjes gewoon bijna bij wijze van spreken plaatsen en het werkt. Dus wij weten ook van het management uit dat wij volledig onafhankelijk zullen blijven werken. En wij doen ook zelf verder onze ontwikkelingen. Vandaar dat nu binnenkort, en Michael heeft vanochtend al een aantal dingen getoond, ook de nieuwe features richting Omnichannel klaar zijn en ook in gebruik gaan worden genomen. Ik hoop dat dat een antwoord is op de vraag.
Nee, zeker. Wat mij betreft mij ook aangevuld inderdaad dat onze ervaring echt is dat het helemaal los staat voor de rest. Het is een moeder die jullie delen. De rest staat allemaal los. Mooi vind ik ook van Tendfor. En daarvoor zijn ook deze training richting onze partners. Dat we jullie zelf ook veel meer in controle laten. Jullie kunnen zelf straks de installaties doen. Dat is een klein brugje al zo meteen richting Michael's stuk. Maar jullie zijn in controle om dingen te doen. Voor deze sessie, voordat ik het vergeet, zijn er vragen. Haal je van mute, stel je vraag. Zet het in de chat, je vraag. We zullen sommige dingen niet altijd meteen beantwoorden. Maar dat komt waarschijnlijk omdat het dan net even handig is in het verhaal. Of dat we het nog meteen gaan bespreken. Of de handig is om net even een stukje af te maken. Dus af en toe een klein beetje geduld erbij. En we vinden het ook leuk. Je kan bovenin een reactie verzenden. Bijvoorbeeld dat ik me nu even een duimpje omhoog stuur. Vind je iets gaafs wat je hoort, dat je denkt, hé, dat is echt interessant. Of daar wil ik meer van weten, laat het op die manier even weten. Dat is altijd leuk. Want we kijken met z'n allen naar een scherm, dat er een beetje interactie is. En dat was voor mij even het laatste stukje. Wat mij betreft kunnen we beginnen. Ik denk Michael aan.
Michael, over to you.
Michael, you didn't understand what we said, but I give a high expectation for you. I said the expectation is very high for you. So now the floor is yours. Good luck.
Thank you. All right, so I will take over the screen share and Once again, welcome everyone to this initial technical session. Now we aim to keep this at a level for everyone to follow, and I urge you to interrupt or ask questions in the chat at any time. As I said on the Tuesday's session, we all have different backgrounds, different experience in contact center software, in Teams telephony. So I will try to keep it at a level where everybody can follow. There is no other end to begin in other than the beginning, as I see it. So this won't be too much of a PowerPoint presentation. The main agenda for those 2 hours is to see the actual onboarding of a real Tendfor customer. We will use a test system, a test tenant. But what you will see is essentially the exact procedure that we would follow or our business partners would follow when you're deploying a new Tendfor customer. A few slides before that on the technical, very high level architecture to understand the main components and protocols that are in place. We trust that you have already had the basic introduction to Tendfor Teams. You do understand at this point what we are all about. Essentially a Microsoft certified contact center software for Microsoft Teams only. We will describe the onboarding process. So the journey of any new Tendfor customer, how that typically, there are like 10 different milestones or steps that are more or less followed in every customer's journey. So a few PowerPoint slides, and then it's all off to live demonstration. So we will start with a blank paper with nothing. From the beginning, the customer, typically you would order a proof of concept system for a customer so they can evaluate the Tendfor service. It's, to be honest, very easy to fall in love with the product once the customer gets to try it. We have about 90% hit rate on proof of concept, meaning that if the customer goes for a proof of concept, they have their evaluation periods for typically a month or so, and then there is a 90% chance that that customer will eventually move into production.
Michael, just to drop in here shortly in Dutch. Dus even ter informatie, we hebben inderdaad, zoals Michael zegt, een hit ratio van 90% op elke klant die uiteindelijk kiest voor een proof of concept. Je moet het een beetje zien als Michael en mijzelf. Wij zijn ook sales onderlegd voor een deel en wij kunnen alles aan de man brengen en Dirk kan dat ook. Maar als je uiteraard een proefrit kan maken en het systeem helemaal kan van A tot Z gaan testen, is het uiteraard ook mooi meegenomen en dan ben je nog meer overtuigd van de capaciteiten van het product. Sorry there, Michael. Over to you again.
No worries, thank you. And of course, many customers would be in their Teams phone migration journey as well. And if you don't opt for Microsoft Teams, you cannot have Tendfor. So that happens in a fairly large portion of those 10% that doesn't go for Tendfor. So Tendfor is designed for Microsoft Teams and nothing else. Good. So essentially the technical onboarding, if you are to break it down to most simply explain it, there are two main components in the integration. There is the integration to the customer's Entra ID, their Azure Active Directory, and there is the integration to the customer's Teams tenant. So we will do the integration from scratch to this new customer's Entra ID environment. We will define permissions in Entra ID. So it's a role-based access for administrators, for example. So who is a Tendfor administrator is defined within the customer's Azure. And in order to work with a new system, you must have at least one administrator who can do all the work. We have our own directory in Tendfor. So the directory would be the members of the Azure Active Directory that are provisioned to Tendfor. Some of those persons will become agents in Tendfor or receptionists, but not the majority. The majority would be the directory or the database of users that the agents and the receptionist would use to in their daily work, to search for people, to do consultant calls, call transfers, all of that. You might ask why we don't do live searches in the Active Directory, but why the data must be provisioned to Tendfor. And the simple answer is that that would be simply too slow. It would be unacceptable with the current APIs to do any kind of searches like that. So there is a database of the users being provisioned in Tendfor that's in control of the customer, what they wish to provision and not. There are also two methods for how to set that up. One method that is suitable for organizations with less than 1,000, not employees, but Entra ID members that are in the Tendfor synchronization scope. And there is one provisioning method that is the go-to option for larger organizations or high security oriented or high security aware organizations. So I will briefly explain both. So in the user provisioning. So the first component is integrate with the Entra ID. The second is to integrate with Microsoft Teams. We rely on resource accounts. So essentially you would set up a Vernon Teams user that will be the entry point to the Tendfor system. So for every main number that the customer will connect to their contact center system, there will be one resource account. And by the end of those 2 hours, we will install the Windows client. We will receive a phone call and transfer a phone call if everything goes well in this deployment. We'll also have a quick look into the contact center administration part. There are thousands of settings in this. We could easily spend a full day on exploring maybe half of the options that are available in the contact center administration, but we'll try to build some very realistic contact center call flow. So we have some example here with an IVR that handles multi-language and some caller input. And if there is time, we'll make sure to throw in automated callback here as well. Should consume maybe 5 minutes to set up. We have already been introduced to the Tendfor statistics portal, but we will have a look at that from the technician's perspective as well. The statistics is not only a gold mine for contact center managers and supervisors, but also for any technicians working with the system. You can find detailed information about every call and even the raw data for every call. I will show you this during the setup today. And we'll save some time for the Q&A at the end of the session. Do we have a question already? Nope, that's just Bart. All right. This is a familiar picture. First lesson to learn, and I will put this in as simple English as possible. Tendfor doesn't care for how the telephony comes into the customer's teams. We are the advanced, the extend model certification, and that means that we can work with any type of PSTN connectivity. So you can even mix those in the same customer tenant. The same agent in Tendfor can serve the first call coming in through a calling plans number to a queue, the second call coming in from an operator connect number to the same queue or to another queue. Technically wise, everything that happens here between Tendfor and Teams is graph communication. So it's the graph protocol only. There is no SIP signaling going on in the Tendfor side. That happens on the right side here. This is, of course, more common for the multinational deployments. So I think in the early days, especially, the early adopters of Microsoft Teams, those were all familiar logos. I think you remember the cloud logo overview that Bart showed you this morning. Those were those multinational businesses that had operations all over the world and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands employees. They were the ones really pushing this type of technology at the early days. So we integrate with the customer's Teams tenant with resource accounts. So you have your regular Teams accounts, that would be my account with my work number, and you have resource accounts for those that are just virtual destinations, numbers that you would call that would reach the customer's Teams environment, but they are not connected to a human Teams user, but to the Tendfor system. So in the world of Tendfor, you need one resource account per number that you place called to the system. And if you've been working with native Teams telephony, native Teams call queues, and native auto attendants, this is the first common pitfall to think that it's the same in Tendfor. In Tendfor, it's a bit smarter because you don't need a resource account license per queue. You can have one resource account license for one customer service number entering the Tendfor solution, where you have an IVR that ends up in 25 different queues. One resource account license, not 25. And this is part of what we will set up here today. At the very heart of the integration is the bot application. So the bot application is what allows Tendfor to control calls in the customer's Teams tenant, calls that are associated to those to the resource account that this bot is allowed to control. So this is one of the very, very first technical step, which we will do in 2 minutes from here, would be to accept the consent to the bot application, allowing Tendfor to make this kind of communication. We have our own queues. So there are Tendfor queues that are way more advanced and sophisticated than those regular Teams call queues, even though it's resource accounts involved to bring in the telephony, so to speak. And then you have the agents. So queues, calls enter the system, distributed to the agents, and the agent, they can also, of course, make consultant transfers and calls to contacts. Now, as soon as the call hits the bot, it's considered Teams internal. So this means actually that the agent does not have to be phone system enabled. You can receive the calls using your SIP URI, or rather it's the object ID in Graph that is in play. And you can also transfer calls to contacts who are non-Teams phone enabled. This may change in the future, but that's how it has been working for as long as Tendfor has been around.
Michael, question for me. If you do outbound calls from Tendfor, do you then also Teams phone isn't needed?
Exactly, same procedure. So you don't call out, when you make an outbound call as an agent, you don't call out as using your own Teams identity. You call out on behalf of the resource account. So okay. The agent does not technically have to have a Teams phone system license. So they call out presenting themselves as customer service Amsterdam, for instance.
Okay, I think it's only needed because you need the resource accounts, and then resource accounts are for free if you have enough Teams phone license. So that's
correct. Yeah.
Great.
Perfect. And then you have the second option. If you remember from this morning, where you could select one click if you have a mobile number as an agent, you could actually old school bridging of the call out to the mobile network. Your mobile subscription starts alerting and you answer on your mobile phone. So that's also handled out of the box. So, as mentioned, with all the communication, it's 100% Graph. There is the directory provisioning that can be either Graph, that would be for organizations with less than 1,000 contacts, or roughly. And there can also be provisioning using the SCIM protocol, SCIM. This is not a Tendfor invention. SCIM is a well-known protocol for third-party application provisioning, essentially. So remember how we said that we provision a directory for the agents and receptionists to work with? That can happen in two ways. Using Graph, that's Tendfor reading the contacts from the Active Directory. That requires read access to be granted in the Azure Active Directory. The other method is not reading, but that's defining in the customer's Azure. They will create what's called an enterprise application with a scope of users that they are pushing to Tendfor. So remember how I said that it's SCIM would be preferred for the larger, high security oriented customers. That would be simply because of the reason that they are fully in control over what information is being shared with Tendfor, what users do we provision, and what attributes. And no read access is needed at all for the SCIM part. Teams presence, that's also Graph. We monitor agents' teams presence in real time so that we can do things based on that information. So that we, for example, do not route calls to people who are attending a meeting or who are in Do Not Disturb in Teams. And we also use that on demand, or when making a search, for instance, we would of course present the presence status in any directory searches that the agents would do. There is also an out-of-the-box Outlook calendar integration, where you would we would read the calendars for users and present those typical requirement for switchboard receptionist type of users. And then all the communication is HTTPS encrypted. Authentication is never handled by Tendfor, but it's Microsoft logon services. So when you open Tendfor, if there is a login prompt, that's Microsoft, meaning that all kinds of password questions, password complexity, multi-factor, none of our business. That's all up to the customer to handle in Azure. So we don't store any usernames or passwords. This also means that for you as a Tendfor vendor or business partner, you would need access to the customer's Entra ID. In order to access a customer's Tendfor system, you would need to have an account in their Entra ID environment that can be granted administration privileges. Some of our business partners that have that as a standard routine, so they would ask for a user for their support team, for instance, while others would prefer to have just ask the customer to screen share in a support situation, for instance. Great. The onboarding process, and this is one of the things that really struck me when I joined Tendfor, coming from a world of legacy telephony, where an implementation project could stretch over several months or half a year. We have had examples. Recently, we set up a customer in South Africa, about 40 agents in 1 week, from the first contact to production. It's never to be recommended to stress a project like that, but it's perfectly possible. We will do the actual technical onboarding here in 1.5 hours and cover all that. So typically you would start with a sales demonstration, similar to what Bart did this morning. Then, in order to initiate that new Tendfor system, the customer would fill out this document. So this is the very first step. You will fill in some information, whether it's a proof of concept or a production system, where you like to be hosted in our hosting nodes around the world. For you guys, it will be the European Union, and physical location here is your country, Azure West, which is, I think, Microsoft data center outside of Schiphol Airport somewhere.
Bad Hoeverdorp, correct. Yeah.
And we also have a unique hosting node in Switzerland. So this is Europe, Amsterdam, this is US, Texas, this is Australia East or something, and Switzerland. So for Switzerland, considering they are not part of the European Union and all of that, they are a bit different. So then it's the most important information would be the tenant ID of the customer's Azure and the primary domain name. And this can be found here. So this is Microsoft Azure. That's my tenant ID. That's unique for this Azure tenant. And this is the primary domain name, tendfordemo.com, that we are about to onboard today from scratch. And essentially that information is sent to Tendfor. We receive the information and we provision the new tenant within 1 to 2 days. Then takes place what we are about to simulate here today, the technical onboarding workshop, where we do the basic integration. This can be followed up by a series of configuration workshops if it's a more advanced scope, if it's a contact center customer with any type of VR integrations and so forth, there would be more work required. If it's a simple attendance solution, we typically configure everything, including the queue that's needed and for any stereotype receptionist environment, that's perfectly possible to cover in an hour and a half. Great. So we are now, we have sent over the technical information so our tech team can create the new Tendfor system. Meanwhile, I always send a checklist to the customer. So you need to bring the right people with the right access, and they need to have the correct resources. And this isn't rocket science. You need to be global admin in Entra ID for the domain that they are about to onboard. The reason for that is that we integrate through a number of enterprise applications, and you must grant what's called admin consent. So that's giving all of those rights that are needed in Graph to Tendfor. You will also need to be a Teams global admin and have the Teams PowerShell module installed. So when working with those third-party resource accounts or application instances, that cannot be managed from Teams Admin Center. So in Teams Admin Center, you have all of the possibilities to manage your apps and your users and your dial plans, your Teams call queues, your Teams auto attendant, but there is no support for any third-party solutions from within Teams Admin Center. So this is kind of entering Teams through the back door, and you will execute a number of PowerShell scripts or commands to create those resource accounts. So essentially creating the numbers in Teams through the back door. In order to be able to do that, the customer will need a Teams Phone resource account license or more. You will need one per number that you will connect to the system. And you will obviously need a phone number. So the phone number must be available in the customer Teams. Can be a calling plan number, can be an operator connect number, and so forth. But it must be available to be assigned to Tendfor. And then it's some hygiene factors, more or less. So we don't spend time finding names of those that shall become agents and administrators. So we always ask for lists so we can configure all of this as we go. We typically do those onboarding sessions as we do per today. I never did an onboarding in person with a customer yet. So that means that it will take place on Teams. And because of that, it's not an absolute requirement, but it was really nice to have a virtual PC, for instance, that the customer can use to simulate an agent workspace. So you can call to the system without having to drop out of the Teams call to answer a call as an agent and so forth. And I can see that a day or two has passed, and we have now received this information. So we sent the PDF with all of that information. That's also including licensing. Typically, a proof of concept would be 10 agents and limited to 30 days or similar. So this is sent out to the technical contacts that you also provide in this document. And we have a number of attachments here. So this is including an onboarding guide. We actually had a few examples of customers onboarding themselves from start to finish without us spending a second on them. But in most cases, a bit of explanation or guidance is always appreciated, and probably a bit faster since we onboard customers every day. So, step one, this is where we will begin the onboarding with this tenant. So those are links to enterprise applications in Microsoft Azure. So essentially the first step is just clicking those links one by one and consenting to those as a global admin. So I will use my admin account here. Microsoft will state as well exactly what permissions in Graph you are consenting to. So I will just click accept. And the first is the bot application that I'm consenting to. So this is the heart of the integration. Without consenting this, you cannot have a functional Tendfor system. Those application permissions, we always share in a technical document. In this specification, you will find for every application, there are either 4 or 5 that the customer must consent to. So for the bot application that we just consented, we state whether it's mandatory or not. And we can see also here exactly what permissions are we granting consent to. So this is the first document that goes to customer's security board for a review, for example. Next is the Tendfor Windows client. This is used for the single sign-on. So essentially, this is in order to be able to open the installed Tendfor Windows client and log on as an agent using your M365 credentials. Then you need this enterprise application. So just click and consent. The Tendfor client is very similar, but this is for the web-based agent. So being able to log on with your Microsoft credentials and also a few other things like reading personal contacts. So you can keep contacts in Tendfor, or rather in Outlook, that appear in Tendfor if you want to have your own personal contacts in your directory. Tendfor web applications, the fourth enterprise application we are giving consent to here, is essentially all of the rest. The web-based administration, the web-based wallboards, the web-based statistics portal, so that users within my Azure, my M365 environment can sign in using their Microsoft username and password. And the fifth one in our case is the Tendfor Entra ID import. So this is the AD read access suitable for customers up to 1,000. It's not a technical limit. We have customers with 10,000 contacts running on this provisioning method as well. But remember that there is an alternative. So this is read all users full profile. Technical term, I believe, is read access.all for the, you can check here. Tendfor Entra ID import, one permission in graph that's called user.read.all. And accept. So that's the first part. The second part would be to validate in the Azure portal to see that the enterprise applications are really consented. So they will be found under enterprise applications in the customer's Azure. So we'll navigate to Microsoft Entra ID and filter out any enterprise applications with the name Tendfor. In a real customer, there will be 5 applications, 1 per link that you consented to. We are terrible at keeping a nice and tidy demo environment, so we have 98 Tendfor applications. The one we are looking for is called Tendfor Web Applications. The customer will have only 1, and this is where we do the next step, defining the Tendfor administrator. You might have noted that I ended up, when I click those consent links, I'm redirected to a Tendfor portal, but I don't have any access here really. I cannot start any agent, I'm not an agent even, so I cannot, we can try to click this one. I'm probably gonna have some error message. So what we need to do is to grant my administrator user administrative privileges. And this relates to one of the questions this morning, where the question was more or less role-based access in Azure Active Directory. So you can assign either users directly, so you can pick 1 or 2 or 5 people that should be administrators, or you can use a group. So if you have your IT department, for instance, you can add that group. When people join and leave the business, they will automatically be granted or restricted access to the Tendfor administration part. So I will click Assign Users and Groups. I will do my user directly. So I will find the user, DM this one, select the user, and then I have a few roles: administrator, statistics user, and wallboard user. Administrator is the most, the highest level of access you can have. If you're an administrator, that includes statistics and wallboards and all of that. But this is also where you can assign certain individuals or a group in Azure Entra ID, statistical privileges, for instance. So if you have all of your managers or super users, supervisors in one group, you can assign the statistics user role to that group, and they will automatically have access to that in Tendfor. And that's it. I believe there isn't even a save button here. So I have added this user. I will need to sign out and back in again. And then we should see the big admin section appear. So the URL to the Tendfor portal is the same for all customers in Europe, for instance. This specific demo system is in Switzerland, in our Swiss hosting node, so I have a different URL. But it's the same URL for all customers. This is what they will meet. So they will identify themselves. We will have a token back from Microsoft Logon Services saying that this is a validated, trusted user. What permissions do we have according to what we have configured? So that's all the depending on rights in Azure and in Tendfor, what you see when logging on. So logging on this user again, I expect to see a big red button that says admin. Bingo. So I now have access to admin, statistics, wallboards, everything. This is where we will spend much of our time here today. So about 10 minutes in the practical onboarding, we have integrated with Azure Active Directory. We have integrated with Teams. That's all prepared for. We still have a few configuration steps to perform before we can call to the system and so forth. The first thing that appears is a landing page in Tendfor admin. So here you can see all of the licensing data. You can see how much you consume in terms of configuration in the system. And should you ever lose this onboarding email, you actually have the same consent links. Those are the same links that we just clicked in that email. They are available here as well. So the first step is that Entra ID integration. So what we will do next is fetch those users that I want from Entra ID to be part of the directory. So I will navigate to batch jobs. I can see that there is a batch job already created here. That's typically done by our support team when we are delivering a new system, but we can show you that step as well. So I will create a new batch job. That will be an Azure AD import. Give it a name. It will be enabled. And then we have a few include and exclude arguments. Those are described in the guide. Essentially what this does is to say, I want to include people only who are members of that Azure Active Directory. I don't like guests or disabled users or things like that. And the exclude argument would be department. So remember how you gave consent to all the full Active Directory. Technically, we have read access to fetch everything, but we can do some filtering on the Tendfor side. So if I wanted, for example, I could filter out, let's say that we are onboarding a company that have presence in 50 different countries, and I only want to include people in Sweden. I believe this would be a valid argument. Wrong button. Sorry about that. I think you get the picture. Just redo that real quick. Sorry for having fat fingers. All right. So you can work with those include, exclude as well. I want to exclude the CEO, exclude the UPN equals, presumably, or things like that. We will create this job. We can also schedule how often it should run in the future. So that's the beauty of things. We will do a one-time operation where we read the users according to those include, exclude rules, and then the directory in Tendfor will be updated every hour at the minute. So if anybody joins the organization, anybody changes their title or department, they get new duties, that will all be updated in at the most 1 hour in Tendfor. So the first time I will trigger this batch job, and we'll keep our eyes in the upper right corner. And this is a one-time operation, so it will take a few minutes if you have 1,000 Entra ID users or so. I think for today we have actually 300 or 400, so it's quite much for a demo system. And we can see that we are now starting to read users from the Azure Active Directory. If I did not have consented that last link, we would of course fail at this point. So the reason we can fetch the users is because we granted consent to read those. We're already at 9% there. You can see a progress bar. And we don't need to stay at this page. So we can actually jump over to the landing page here and see that we have 67 out of 10,000 contacts provisioned. If I update the page, we are now at 77. They're being populated. I can see those under the directory. So those are the users and all of the attributes that are synchronized to Tendfor. It's always a good practice to just click somebody, pick one, and check that it looks correct with first name, last name, title, company, department, phone numbers, and so forth. Most important part of everything is the object ID. Everything in Graph is based on object IDs. So if this isn't there, you're going to have problems. You won't see Teams presence or things like that. Right. We are at 178 contacts. And still going, still counting. Let's see what that progress bar is at, 34%. So remember how some of those should be agents. And don't blink, because then you might miss it. This is the most simple operation ever. So to grant somebody agent privileges, you would search for an individual now that they are in the system, and it's one click right here, promote to agent. So now Archie is an agent. You can see on the landing page that we now consume one of my 20 agent licenses, and he's actually able to log on to any of those Tendfor agent interfaces at this point. He cannot serve any queues because he doesn't have any permission to serve any queues, and there is no number to call to the system. But that's the simple operation of how to. It's really not creation of agents, but Entra ID users that you promote to agent status. We can do one more. Michael Eastbay, this is my demo user, is now an agent. And we can do this guy, Luke, can be an agent. Oscar would be Bart's user, is now an agent. They would appear under here. And now we have a few agents to work with for this proof of concept. That's perfect. This operation is driving licenses. So that's only possible to perform by a global Tendfor administrator, somebody with full admin privileges. Let's see how that batch job is doing. Almost done. So a few settings. When the system is delivered, it would typically be delivered in the time zone of the hosting cluster. So we can check that real quick. That looks good. And we have languages. And this has nothing to do with client languages. That's all handled within the client, where you can select Dutch or Swedish or Spanish as an agent. But this has to do with the information that's played back to the callers. Those are the standard languages available in Tendfor, and you can add about 160 more languages if you wish. So if you want the system to speak Kazakh, that's a language I learned, or Chinese, you can add that as a custom language. Right now we only have English enabled, but why don't we enable Dutch, Netherlands, and French as well. So those are all global system settings. So wherever I am about to configure my voice prompt for the contact center solution, I will have an option to use either English or Dutch or French. All right, so now that batch job has finished, we have 575 users even in the system. We have out of those 4 who are agents. And the next batch job is about to run in 8 minutes, so at the full hour. So the master of the data is the Active Directory, the Azure AD. In Tendfor, you cannot change any of the Azure attributes. So if I click a random user here, Adelina, you can see that most of the information is grayed out. I don't change names in Tendfor. I don't change titles or country or cities. That's all handled in Azure. What I can do is to add on some Tendfor. I can add comments. I can add tags, which are essentially keywords that are presented. And you can also work with custom directory fields. And This is, of course, very powerful for attendant and receptionist users, but it's not too much to show, so I can actually create a new custom field. So what you see here, those are attributes that every customer would like to, be able to see what title an individual has, or search for a specific city to list everybody in Antwerpen, for instance. But if there's any information that's not present here that you want to add to the system, you can use directory fields in the system. You can have up to 10 of those. So let's say that the cost center is critical for me to be able to handle calls. That's actually a real example. We can do anything here. We can do a car license number. So those are created in the system. You can choose whether those are mapped towards Azure Active Directory, or whether you populate the data in those fields directly in Tendfor. So now that we have that field, it will appear for every user, and I can just type in the information here required. You can also import, if you want to import 575 car license plate numbers to the system. And this is neatly handled all throughout. So you can actually, you will find the car license plate number as a custom column in the agent client, so you can see it. You can create a dedicated search button, so you can search for who has this car license plate number, and so forth. Great. We are soon halfway in, but I would like to spend maybe 10 minutes or so before we take a coffee break by creating the phone number so that we can actually call to the system. Then I think we have earned ourselves a coffee break. So that's called Tendfor endpoints. This is the resource accounts that will be created in Teams with real phone numbers. Yes, Dirk?
Can I have a quick question in between? There was a question this morning about information from the CRM to the system. I think this was the part that you can show that all kind of information from Active Directory can be loaded in Tendfor. One thing is also important for the listeners, I will do it in Dutch, are de external contacts. Wat je hier kan doen is ook externe contacten toevoegen. Dat is een vraag die we heel veel krijgen van klanten. Is hoe kan ik de slager, de bloemist en dat soort dingen toevoegen. Dus je kan ook een algemeen adresboek in Tendfor zelf maken. Dat zit standaard niet in Teams, dat je een algemeen adresboek hebt. Er wordt toch snel verwezen naar een CRM. Maar hier kun je dus zelf contacten maken en ook hier kun je een import doen om allerlei contacten te doen. Dat is een veelgestelde vraag van klanten en kan op deze manier ingevoerd worden. Belt zo'n klant, heb je meteen herkenning, al die dingen heb je dan meteen erbij. Thank you, Michael. That was my question.
Thank you. All right. So to create the endpoints, how this works is that we will fill out information in Tendfor about the resource account. We will be handed back the PowerShell scripts that will be executed in Teams PowerShell. I haven't seen Teams PowerShell when I joined Tendfor, and after 2 weeks, I was onboarding my own customers. It's really a tool where you can look cool without understanding exactly what you're doing. So it's only a matter of copy and paste. So to create the new endpoint, you must provide some information. The name here, that is going to be the display name. So if you remember Bart's demo, when there was a call coming in, there was a Teams toast in the lower right corner of his screen with a name. This is the name that is going to be presented. So that's presumably going to be Reception Stockholm or Customer Service Europe or something similar. We will use today Customer Service Europe Middle East. That's going to be my display name. We don't have the object ID yet. That is the most important component. Also here, always with graph, but we don't have it until we have ran the first PowerShell script to create the resource account. Then we will be handed back the information that we'll put here. I must invent some kind of SIP URI. I will use this one. TF for Tendfor, customer service EMEA at the domain that's onboarded. And a phone number. Today we'll be using a Swedish phone number of a direct routing type. This is the only place where you actually need to care about what PSD and connectivity, because the PowerShell scripts differ a little depending. So we can generate the correct scripts for you. But otherwise than that, you never need to care for what technology is being used to bring those phone calls into Teams. We'll use a voice routing policy. That's the name of the policy that I will find in my Teams admin center. If I don't provide one, it's going to be the default org-wide default or whatever it's called. And also if there is any specific dial plan for this resource account. Tendfor uses its own unique bot application per customer. This is different in competition. We don't share that part of the infrastructure between customers. So we have every customer have their own unique bot application with their own unique application ID. You can see that ID on the bots here. And we can click create. Must be in Teams friendly format. Phone number. So that's the endpoint. And here are my PowerShell scripts. So next thing I'm going to do is open up Teams PowerShell. I have a copy button here, so I will just copy, paste and run, copy, paste and run, and so forth. We'll explain a bit about what we are doing as well. So I will open up PowerShell. The first command is only to launch the Teams PowerShell. So this is me logging on as a global Teams admin. Multi-factor, presumably. 68. All right, looks good. So I will then do the next. The first PowerShell scripts here. This is to create the application instance. So we'll just paste it and run it. I get back here. Remember to update the Tendfor endpoint with this object ID. So I'm going to copy that and paste that back into my Tendfor admin. So that's the unique object ID. So now it's actually created. So I can go if you want to show the whole thing here, I could actually, what name did we use? Customer service EMEA. So that's the one that I created. That's the UPN that we used and so forth. Next PowerShell command is to connect the phone number. So in order to do this, you must first assign the license. And that is typically best done in the Microsoft admin portal. So in order to bind a public telephone number to this virtual account that we just created, it's required what's called a Teams phone resource account license. Those are typically free of charge. You get a number of those with your Teams phone system, depending the volume of users. But always a good thing to check that the customer has this in place. So I will go to my active users here. We'll find the customer service EMEA and see what licenses we have available. I wonder if we have a license here today. Nope. Same as Tuesday. So I will just first have to free one license so we can steal it. Let me check. Yeah, this one has a license. So I will just uncheck it. Should give me one license. and back to the original one.
And Michael, like I said last time, colleagues of business partners can order these licenses through the marketplace. The resource accounts are for free, or of course, if you have them somewhere else, they have to be ordered through another CSP provider.
Good point.
In de marketplace zijn die echt heel makkelijk toe te voegen. Officieel zijn ze bij 1 per 10 phone system licenties, Teams phone licenties, maar vaak kunnen we heel makkelijk al 50 toevoegen aan de klant. Dus zorg dat je als je dat op tijd gedaan hebt, kun je ze gemakkelijk toevoegen.
So there can be some delay here when applying the licenses. I'm sure anybody working with Microsoft Cloud have had this experience. So let's see if the license is already in place. So I will just copy and paste the whole thing here. See if we have an error message or if things seem to go through today. And it does seem to go through. So what we do here is assigning this phone number to the resource account that we just created. Next is to bind the bot application to this resource account. Very important, because this is the part where we allow Tendfor to control the calls for this resource account, the Tendfor bot application. So we'll just copy and run. That went well. And if we have any voice routing policy, yes, we do. We'll apply that one as well. Nice. And I don't have any specific dial plan. I will allow my agents to call anywhere in the world. So now, what happens if we call this? Probably nothing, because even if the call comes into Tendfor, we have no definition. We haven't told the system what should happen, so it simply disconnects. So in order to do just a quick little test before we have earned our coffee break here, I can, we set the language, it's set to English, and I will just create my first queue in the system. So this can be customer service EMEA. And the presented identity. So this is the resource accounts that used to mediate this call. And just to verify, I can put some welcome greeting in here in text-to-speech. Welcome to Vodafone Ziggo Partner Training Environment, one of our sports. Use the same. So those would be the queue messages for this specific queue. I can play this back as Bart showed.
Welcome to Vodafone Ziggo Partner Training Environment. One of our support specialists will assist you shortly.
Sounds absolutely beautiful. So what I will do now is connect my endpoint to the queue that we just created. Customer service EMEA. And this is the big moment of truth. I'm going to pick up my private cell phone here, and I'm going to try to call that number that we see on the screen here. If everything goes well, we have a coffee break.
Welcome to Vodafone Ziggo Partner Training Environment. One of our support specialists will assist you shortly.
We don't have any agents logged on. We don't even have any agents defined to serve those queues and so forth, but we do have a working Tendfor solution. Great. Any questions or all thirsty?
Looks like all thirsty, Michael. Let's have a break. Was it 7 minutes, Michael?
7 minutes, standard.
Great. Nou, iedereen 7 minuutjes even een korte plas, drink, pauze, wat je ook maar wil doen in die 7 minuten. Kan heel veel. Veel plezier even en we zijn zo weer terug. Tot zometeen.
Super. See you in 7.
See you in 7.
Zo, allemaal weer terug hopelijk. Nou, kleine kick-off. Je hebt net gezien hoe makkelijk het aan te sluiten is en een nummer bereikbaar is. Dit was denk ik voor de minder technische mensen het moeilijkste stukje even om doorheen te komen. Nu gaan we verder met de verdere configuratie. Ja, voor sales nu belangrijk om op te letten om te zien wat voor mooie configuraties je kan maken. Floor is yours, Michael.
Thank you, Dirk. So we have done pretty much already for the technical onboarding. We have completed the integration with customers' Entra ID. We have provisioned some almost 600 users to Tendfor from their Active Directory. We have promoted 4 of those to be agents in the system. We have the integration with Teams in place. We have the bot application prepared and consented. We have created the resource account so we can call to the system, and we have that first initial queue. There are a few more configuration objects that I would like to walk you through real quick. So first of all, we have the queue and we have the agents. What we don't have is the relationship between those. We haven't told the system that this and this agent should be able to serve the service desk Europe Middle East queue. And that is done through roles in Tendfor. So you create roles. In order for an agent to serve a queue, they must have at least one role containing that queue. One agent can have multiple roles. They can serve multiple roles at the same time, and one role can contain multiple queues. So we can create one that for simplicity will be customer service EMEA. I will include the queue. So this queue is served by an agent serving this role, and I would like Archie, Michael, and Oscar, but not Luke, to be able to serve this queue. So we have promoted this user, Michael Eastbay, as an agent. And I don't see why he shouldn't be able to install the Windows client or open the web-based agent and start handling phone calls. The MSI for the Windows client is available from the portal. So you would find it under Windows client here. You would click download. And the first time you open the system, you will need to provide the server address. That's the one time that you need to care for that as an agent. That can also be handled by IT. So technically wise, this is written into the Windows registry as a registry key. So if that can be centrally managed by the customer's IT for all users, the agents won't have to care for this. So the latest software is always available from here. And there is also an automatic update process. If there are new versions deployed, we have a new version just around the corner, as we mentioned earlier this morning. That update will happen automatically unless you have configured the tenant to handle updates otherwise. So I will just run this MSI installer. While we wait for that one to be installed, we can revisit the onboarding document, because here you will find the client requirements. Some of those are hard requirements and some of those are recommendations. For instance, per client, for the Windows client, you need Microsoft Windows. You cannot run this on an Apple device or things like that. We are Microsoft-based and Teams-based. Recommended display size, and we recommend a keyboard with a numpad, for instance, so you can handle all your call handling on the numeric part here. Not mandatory, but for the best user experience. Number one most important thing is if the customer is behind any type of proxy or firewall preventing the users to connect, then that would be needed to be bypassed, any type of proxy solutions.
Sorry to interrupt, just a short nuance there. We have, however, customers who are not working in a Microsoft environment and they get the system working, but we cannot guarantee for that.
Definitely. I don't see why you can't use the web agent on an Apple device or emulators to simulate a PC environment. We don't support that officially, but definitely. If the customer takes responsibility for that, you can probably find a lot of working solutions. So what's being tested is Windows.
Correct.
Great. So once the agent client is installed, I will open up as Michael Eastbay. So probably the system will try to log me on as that user. You can, if you want to sign in as some other user, you can specify credentials. That's the little click I did there. Great. Let me see, this screen resolution it's kind of small for you guys, isn't it? Let me know if it's too small. Perfect. So I have the queue here. I can see that it's open, it's green here, and I am ready in Tendfor. I'm logged on. I'm also green in Teams. For your convenience, we can maybe change this to Dutch. Not Deutsch. And meanwhile, I will prepare to place a call to the system.
Let me know if you also want me to do calls. Huh?
No worries. Call coming in.
Welcome to Vodafone Ziggo Partner Training Environment. One of our support specialists will assist you shortly.
That's the call coming in from my mobile number. This is the queue that I have called. And this is the name of the resource account. I will probably be able to answer here. Welcome to customer services. How may I help you today? Okay, you want to be connected to Oscar Wilson. Let me see what I can do there. Oscar Wilson, he seems to be away in Teams, but I will transfer you either way here. Off we go. Probably ringing at your desk, Bart. Works as a charm. So we do have a working solution. What we will do next is have a look at the scheduling mechanism, because right now it's going to be green 24/7. And of course, we can control that. So we can have our predefined opening and closed hours and the handling for that. That is done under schedules, and you will be able to connect schedules either to a queue directly or to an IVR, which is called a visitor flow in Tendfor. So I will create my first schedule and I will connect it to this queue that we're using here today. Time zone looks correct. We can easily handle time zones. So if you have your APAC service desk queue and your North America service desk queue in the system, you just set the correct time zone. And we'll add a schedule rule to begin with. This will be our regular business hours. Monday through Friday from 7 in the morning to 6 in the evening. This is where we define what should happen when it's closed. We can do something really simple, just play a phrase, or we can do something more advanced, send a call to another queue or an IVR or voicemail or callback, whatnot. But we'll do something very simple here. Now, between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. Thank you for calling. Can play that back.
Welcome to Contoso Service Desk EMEA. Our regular opening hours are Monday to Friday between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. Thank you for calling.
Sounds good. Now that's my first rule. This is where you will handle also any exceptions. So if you have bank holidays, different periods of time with different opening hours, closing earlier on Fridays, open on Saturdays but not Sundays, and so forth, you would add multiple schedule rules. I'm going to create one for tomorrow, so that will be Swedish Swedish National Day. Recur each year. Yeah, we have the Swedish Constitution Day on the 6th of June every year. So I will configure this one once and never care for it anymore. We'll be closed all day, and we can play a different type of message here.
Michael, question. I know in the Netherlands there's one time every 5 years the holidays for the First or Second World War. Can that also be configured?
Definitely. So
Okay.
you can add a schedule rule. You can add it specific. It won't recur each year, so you would have to define each and every 2025, 2030, 2035, and so forth. Yeah. So we can handle pretty much all of the common requirements. Say that we are opening and closing multiple times per day. That's one common scenario. The customer says, yeah, by the way, we have a lunch break between 12 and 1, and we are completely closed. That would look like this. So you can have open from 7 to 12. Then you can, within the same rule, we can open again at 1, and we can close again at 6 in the evening. So multiple opening and closures. We can handle a certain time period. So for realistic scenario in Sweden, I guess half of the businesses, they would have summertime. So from 1st of June to the last of August, we close 1 hour earlier. We work 1 hour less. We typically say because we get so little sun at this far up north. So that's why during the summertime when there is actual sunshine outside, we need to make the most of it. And you can care for that. So several days or unique days, closing half a day, any of those regular customer requirements would be easily handled. Now that we have the schedule, I will connect it to either one queue in my system or to 100 queues. So you can have the same schedule, the same hours, control 100 queues. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same message or same closed handling. That can actually be unique, even though they share the same hours. So now that I'm associating this queue with this schedule, if I were to log on here at 6:01 in the evening, this would be closed. You can actually see here that it's going to close at 6. You also have a little scheduling icon that I can just hover, so I can see what is actually configured. I think a restart is required. I would see Monday through Friday and Swedish National Day in this place. So all of the agents can kind of keep track on whether the system is configured correctly for Swedish Constitution Day tomorrow. There you can see, if I hover the mouse here, Monday to Friday, 7 to 12, and then it's closed for 1 hour and open in the afternoon. And 6th of June, geschlossen. Is that how you say it?
Correct.
All right.
Closed.
So that would be the scheduling. We have the role that we went through, and next up would be a few more of those queue settings to look into. So we had ourselves a welcome greeting. Bart showed you a little bit this morning on how you can work with recurring phrases. So for example, you can read out the waiting time, you can read out the queue position, you can read out the number of agents serving, and you can also write any free text in between those. Thank you for waiting. Our support engineers are doing their best to assist you as soon as we can. So those would be dynamic phrases. You can play those back immediately if you want to listen to an example of what those sounds like.
Thank you for waiting. Our support engineers are doing their best to assist you as soon as we can. The estimated waiting time is 7 minutes. You are number 5 in line. For agents are working hard to assist you as soon as possible.
So that will be all of it. So we can keep it maybe at least for queue waiting time sentence. Tendfor is not delivered with any music, but that doesn't mean that you cannot use queue music if you wish. We deliver the system with ringback tones for the different parts of the world where we deliver Tendfor. So we can play US ringtones, Australian ringtones, or in our region, European ringtones. If I wanted to have queue music, it's super simple. I would need an MP3 file or a WAV file that I would add to the system. And what good piece of music can we destroy here today by playing back from a mobile phone speaker? Maybe this one. Edvard Grieg. So this is an MP3 file. I'm uploading it centrally to the system. And then I can either decide from here whether I want to use that piece of music for all of my queues, or if I want that to be unique for this specific queue, we can configure that. So instead of ringtones in between those messages, we'll play this MP3 music file. We can do that when the agent parks the caller or put them on hold as well. So as simple as that. We can try it out. Welcome greeting.
Welcome to Vodafone Ziggo Partner Training Environment. One of our support specialists will assist you shortly.
That's absolutely disrespectful for such a beautiful classical masterpiece. But it works. That's the main purpose. Great. And for when it comes down to the languages, remember how we enabled the system-wide languages that we wanted to use? You will also have the option to select your speaker. You have 3 speakers for the Dutch language. For the larger languages, you have plenty more. And for the English language, you have way too many voices or speakers to choose from. So this means that we can select, right now we're using Jenny multilingual. So if I change that to Ryan multilingual, if I had 300 voice prompts configured all through the system, I change the speaker here with 1 click. So now it's going to be a male voice when we call to the system.
Welcome to Vodafone Ziggo Partner Training Environment. One of our support specialists will assist you shortly.
All right. What's really cool is the fact that we have those multilingual voices with the English language, and they are capable of speaking about 40 or 45 languages using the same voice. So those are AI-powered voices. We use Azure AI services or cognitive services for the text-to-speech. So you can have the same speaker speak Spanish and Chinese and Dutch and English and plenty of other languages. We can leave this one at Jenny, I think. Great. So we installed the Windows client. We had a look at the prerequisites for the client. And what we will spend a little time on next is a live exercise just to get a little flavor, a little teaser of building more advanced call flows. So as you noted, we have the endpoint, which is connected to the queue, but there are some more logics built into that. So for example, it's open some certain hours, it's closed certain hours. So just the fact that we are connecting the endpoint to the queue doesn't mean that you're actually queuing all the time. We can also set up, I can show you that part because it's very essential, a no agent scenario. So a handling for when it's open in the schedule, but 0 agents are logged on. So if I do log out of the system, me being the only agent, I will first of all have a warning here. I'm the last logged on agent. Do you wish to proceed? If I do that, the queue is still open in the schedule, but we can set up a kind of fallback to route the call to what's called an event handler. So we can just do something very simple here. No agent event, CS EMEA. That's definitely not how you formulate yourself, but it works good for a demo purpose. So I'm calling, open in the schedule, but no agents.
Vodafone Ziggo partner training environment. One of our support specialists will assist you shortly.
And of course, I'm missing one important piece. I need to connect the event handler to the queue. So essentially an event handler is a node just now floating in cyberspace. And same here, you can use this no agent for one queue or for 20 queues and have the same definition, or set up different event handlers for different queues. Now we should hear that message. Open in the schedule, but no agent logged on.
Welcome to Vodafone Ziggo partner training. No one wants to speak to you at the moment. Please call someone else.
Not very polite, but it's a good fallback. Otherwise, you would be queuing. So you would be queuing in empty cyberspace and wait for some agent to presume maybe log on, which is not recommended. So this is something that we always urge to set up. At some point, the customer is going to forget to put in the Swedish national holiday, and nobody's at work, but the service is still open. So good to have that kind of fallback for that scenario. And you also have, I think you noted, a few other options. So for any queue, even though we are not doing any advanced call flow configuration, you can have a separate calls can be routed. If there is too many callers, if there are more than 10 callers in line, what should happen with caller 11? You set up an event handler, send them off to another queue or to an external number or to a voicemail, whatnot. And you can also set a max queue time. So we can, for instance, queue for 5 minutes only in this queue, and then we are off to whatever event handler we configure. So
is that
again,
the part, Michael, is that the part where you can fill in the callback scenario?
That's definitely possible. It's not the most common way to configure callback, but it's definitely possible. So you can have an event handler in no agents that says that we are all busy drinking coffee at this point, but would you like us to call you back as soon as it's somebody is available? Press 1 and leave your phone number. The rest will be automated.
Okay, thank you.
Definitely. And that's right. We were to set up the callback feature. We can do that really quick. So just let me check here real quick that I have. This is good. This is. I think we are good here. Yes. So the mission is to set up callback with the most common setup. That would be an option while queuing. So not kind of forcing the caller into the callback application, but provide them with a queue message that says that there is currently 20 minutes of waiting time and 2 poor agents are serving the queue at this point. Would you like us to call you back when it's your turn? Press something. This is a one-time operation to enable callback in the system. Again, it's included in the license, available to all customers. You click this button that says create callback entities once. And that means that a bunch of default configuration has already been done. So if I go to queues, I now have a callback queue. And what I want from here is simply a little message that I want to steal for my second queue here. So this message we can put at, let's not do so many, so we have to wait for so long, but we can Let's say after 20 seconds, I like to read the queue position to the caller. After 40 seconds, that will be recurring too, I would like to still read the queue position sentence, but give them an option. And let me steal that phrase in your language as well. Right? So this is the prompt to the caller.
Als u niet wenst te wachten in de wachtrij en liever wilt teruggebeld worden als het aan u is, druk dan op 1.
Druk dan op 1. Sometimes it's very similar to between our languages, and sometimes I can't understand what's a word and what's a sentence. So now we have the instructions. What we need is the technical part. So we need to actually configure that we can press 1. That will be touch tones. So this is not an IVR. We have already left the IVR. We are queuing, but we can still configure touch tones that the system is listening to while queuing. So I'll press 1 to trigger what's called a callback flow. And that's a pre-configured application with everything you need available. So if I now log on to the system, actually no need for that callback queue. I just wanted the manuscript there. I expect to hear the welcome greeting, some classical music.
Vodafone Ziggo Partner Training Environment. One of our support specialists will assist you shortly.
I would like to hear the first queue message after 20 seconds of waiting. So that would be the queue position, not yet the callback option. You typically don't want to present that too early to the caller.
You are number 1 in line.
And some music, and the next time after 40 seconds. So you set the interval at what time you are presenting those or playing back those recurring phrases. We should hear the callback option.
You are number 1 in line. If you don't want to wait in line and prefer that we instead call you back when it's your turn, press 1.
Sure.
You have called from the following number, +4670838907. If you want us to call you back on this number, press 1. If you want us to call you back on a different number, press 2. To return to the queue and wait in line for your turn, press 3.
Well, this
to hear
number.
your options again, press 4.
This number sounds good.
Please stay close to your phone. We will call you right back as soon as it's your turn in the line.
Watch what happens in the queue. The rest is automated. So this is classified as its own category. It's a callback call that will be presented in statistics. It has its own unique icon here with a little arrow. From the agent perspective, there is no difference in handling the call. They will answer the call as normal, and they are now on an outgoing call, calling back, presenting the service desk Europe Middle East number to the caller. And that's setting up callback in 3 minutes.
Michael, how can we see the line? Is the customer in the same position in the queue if he puts the callback?
Yes, so by default, we put the callback in the same queue, and that means that you account for if you've been waiting for 20 minutes already, you will account for that. You can also work with a setup where you have a separate queue with another prioritization, so that's more of a flavor of how to set things up. But by default, it's what it sounds like in the default phrase. We'll call you back when it's your turn in the line.
Okay.
Good question again. Great. So for the final part, we will do some more advanced call flows. This is an imaginary bank that's called Orange Bank, and we will be presented a number of requirements that are very realistic. So this would be maybe like the essence of 90% of all of the call flows. Then there is, of course, lots of fancy stuff that we don't have a chance to show you here today. So just to get a feeling for how to work with the more advanced configuration. This is called a visitor flow. I already have a callback flow. So when I press that touch tone 1, I ended up in this flow. And we'll take it from the beginning. So I will create a new visitor flow that will be used for main number Orange Bank. Create. So anything more advanced than just the schedule mechanism and opening and closing. What we did so far, an attendant customer would be ready to go live with that. Opening and closing your closed message, your queuing, maybe a few queue settings and work on those manuscripts, but that's pretty much there. So if you have more advanced requirements, typically contact center environments, that would be the time to introduce the customer to visitor flows. Those consists essentially of a big box of Lego pieces that you put together in an order to your liking, depending what you want to achieve. So we have a number of different actions. The first action that I will be using here is a phrase, because the first requirement from this customer was indeed to hear 24/7, 365 days per year, welcome to Orange Bank customer services. Okay, so I will just put that in there.
Welcome to Orange Bank customer services.
Sounds good. And I will save. So this is the most simple call flow ever. I'm going to redirect that endpoint. So instead of connecting the calls that comes into this main number to the queue, we now have the options to choose the visitor flows that we have in the system as well. So this is a very simple demonstration also how you can build your call flows on the side, call through everything, and when it's time to go live, you are in 100% in charge of what happens when you call this number. So now it's no longer to the customer service queue, but to this main IVR instead. So I'm calling the same number that we just called.
Welcome to Orange Bank customer services.
And then we're going to disconnect the call because we haven't further configured what should be, what should happen with the call. On our next request, it says, during opening hours, the caller will be presented some options to choose from. Sounds like an IVR menu. But when calling outside of opening hours, the customer should hear. Okay, so it's a scheduling, but of an IVR instead. And this is the neat part. So we have a schedule already, so we can actually reuse that. So after this phrase has been played, we will perform what's called a check open. This is a logical check of any schedule or queue, which is kind of over next lesson. So we'll have a look at this schedule and redirect the caller either to the left or to the right. We're going down two different paths. It sounded like when it's open, we are to present them with a menu, so we can select that already. And when it's closed, there was some type of phrase, I believe. So this is the same schedule. Remember that we had a configuration for that schedule that we could use. Then we'll have that played, or we can use just the schedule for the logical check, whether it's open and closed, and do something different based on this, on the outcome there. I will configure the closed phrase. We already heard the part, welcome to Orange Bank. That will happen, will be handled already. So this would be the closed message. And I can save. And now we're starting to see that the call flow here takes shape. So you have this kind of waterfall view of the call flow. The call comes in the root, and then you follow with your index finger. What happens next? We have some kind of phrase being played. There's a scheduling mechanism that sends during opening to a menu, and during closed, we read a phrase, for instance. You can also name those. So here we can present the name, welcome message. This can be open or closed so that everybody can easily understand what's going on here. This can be main menu. Maybe I have more than one menus in the same call flow. This can be closed message. All right. So next up is that menu, the IVR itself. Okay, so we're calling a bank, so that would be finance-related inquiries, I assume. So for questions regarding loans, press 1, savings and credit cards. Okay, I have the full manuscript here. That's perfect. So when opening this menu action, every of those action that you configured have different configuration components. So this is configuring the menu instructions. We'll just paste that in there. And it says actually, please hold, you will automatically be connected to a switchboard operator. So then I don't like any more attempts than one. Otherwise we would loop the menu 3 times before proceeding. And we can put a timeout threshold for 3 seconds. Then I have the touch tones here to configure. And in order to do so, I must have the destinations. I only have one queue at this point. Luckily, let's pretend that now we didn't do so much configuration, but if we did maybe 20 or 30 different configuration settings here, it's very neat to just make a copy of a queue. So this can be the first queue. That was BOP for Bank of Paris, or Bank of UBI for Orange Bank. Loans. I can make a copy of that for my next queue. That will be savings and credits. And make a copy for investment advice. We also had some switchboard operator queue. So that can be switchboard. So that's typically, you can create a template queue that you keep in the system and then you can just copy paste. And that goes for schedules and visitor flows and most configuration objects. So if you have 10 IVRs that are fairly similar, just pointing to different queues for different regions or whatnot, copy paste of the object saves you a lot of time. All right, so now that we have the queues, we'll head back to the menu and we'll start connecting them. So press 1 for, of course, it doesn't have to be as easy as just queuing, but in this case, we will just queue to loans. Press 2 for another queue, will be credit cards. Press 3 for investment advice.
Michael, sorry for interrupting you. There's a question in the chat. Maybe you can have a look at it.
Let's see.
It's in English, so.
There we go. Here. Native Teams calling. We have customers struggling when they want to redirect an active call to another department. Support queue agent wishes to redirect the call to the sales department instead of directing the call. Teams user who is a member of this department. Okay, yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. So you can, from within, easiest thing here, I will just restart the client here now that we have several queues. Question is, in short, can you call an IVR queue or other endpoint directly from the agent? The technical answer is both yes and no. You cannot call another voice application directly, but this is all Tendfor internal. So if I wanted to call another agent, we have handled that in a smart way where I can just right-click Oscar Wilson here, and I can call the agent directly. So that's how I would, easiest way to call a fellow agent colleague. Same goes for queues. So if I wanted to transfer or make a call to the switchboard or to loans, I will just right-click and call the queue. You will actually find those also in the search result. So Tendfor queues are presented automatically with live queue information and all of that. But not the IVR directly. That would be calling the phone number, I think. But that's normally you wouldn't, call an IVR, and you would call the destination for that IVR. Great.
We're getting close to the end, Michael. 5 more minutes to whatever you want to show.
Thank you. So what we will do is multi-language setup. I think we can make room for. So this requirement says most of our customers are English-speaking internationals, but we have about 30% Dutch-speaking. We would like an option, press 9 for Dutch. And this is a neat part where you don't have to make a double configuration. So remember that we already activated Dutch to start with. We'll probably need some phrase somewhere in between here that can say a phrase. That will be in your language.
Voor meer informatie in het Nederlands, druk op 9.
Okay, press 9. I will add the Dutch translation of this right here. And I will configure the tone. So this will be a touch tone, press 9. We'll use something that's called set language. So this is essentially giving the instructions to the system that now it's time to switch. We configured English as default language up until now. So if we press 9, we set the language to Dutch. And then this is the smart part. We don't have to build another menu, but we can actually use the go-to action in Tendfor to make a reference to any call flow and any point in that call flow. So when I press 9 here, we switch language to Dutch and we loop back to the same menu that I'm already in. I could set it up here as well, but then we would hear the press 9 for Dutch prompt again, and we already heard that, so there is no point. So looping back to the main menu, and we're done. We can try it.
Welcome to Orange Bank Customer Services. Voor meer informatie in het Nederlands, druk op 9.
9.
Voor vragen over leningen, toets 1 voor sparen en creditcards, druk op 2 voor beleggingsadvies, druk op 3 voor alle andere vragen, blijf hangen en u wordt automatisch doorverbonden met een telefoniste.
Right, and that would be ordering the callback is already configured in Dutch. All of that callback dialogue is already taken care of. So bottom line is that you have all of those configuration objects that allows you to minimize the amount of administration in a smart way, connecting one schedule to multiple IVRs and queues at the same time. For any configuration like this, you don't necessarily need a Dutch menu. You can, of course, do that as well. Press 9 for a Dutch menu to Dutch queues with people who only speak Dutch serving those queues. But technically, there is no need for that. So again, it's only a flavor. We didn't even touch on the more advanced bits here where we have the caller input, where we can ask for a ticket number or a social security number, a postal code, shoe size, anything, present that to the agent or take routing decision based on what input we have connected, we have provided. We have the possibility to do more advanced things with web service integration using Power Automate call flows like Bart described this morning. Simple example of evaluate interaction data. If I wanted that Dutch handling to be automated, I could use evaluate interaction data and separate the call flow based on some information that we have. So for instance, if anybody calls, the calling party starts with +33, that's France, we send you off to the French menu. If the calling party starts with +46, we send you off to the Swedish menu. So it doesn't have to be this traditional press 9 for Dutch. But this is those components that you see here. They would at least, accommodate for 50% of all of the call flows that the customer would have. Then you can, of course, do more, even more.
Great, thank you, Michael. We're in the last minute. Vraag. Zijn er nog vragen aan iedereen voordat de data echt 3 uur is? Ik wil ons een beetje aan de tijd houden voor de mensen die ook weer verder moeten. Zijn er nog vragen die we snel kunnen behandelen? Uiteraard, mochten er buiten deze tijd nog vragen zijn, laat het weten. Dan komen we er later op terug. Voor de mensen die al weg moeten meteen om 3 uur, bedankt voor het luisteren naar deze webinar. Ik hoop dat jullie het interessant vonden. En wij komen snel even terug met een vervolg op deze trainingen. Hè? Iedereen die het gevolgd heeft, de business partners, die kunnen gebruik gaan maken van een demo-account. We komen er later op terug hoe je dat gebruik van kunnen maken. Dus voor nu, mochten er nog vragen zijn, laat het even weten. En voor er geen vragen, hartstikke bedankt voor het luisteren en tot snel. Michael, again, thank you for your great demo. En Bart, voor jou uiteraard hetzelfde, maar dan in het Nederlands.
Graag gedaan. Als er nog vragen zijn, we kunnen gerust nog een paar. We will stay on for a couple more minutes, Dirk, so I know you had another one. But if there's any. Thank you very much for the applause.
Thank you.
We will stop the recording.